forest was always quiet at dusk. Long shadows stretched across the ground, and the last light of the sun touched the treetops with fading gold. The air was cold enough to bite the skin, but still gentle, like a warning before winter's true arrival. Chlara moved through the forest with slow steps, her dark cloak brushing the fallen leaves. She had lived near these woods for most of her life. Their silence matched her own, and perhaps that was why she came here so often. People in the village said the forest was dangerous, that wolves ruled the night. But Chlara never feared them. She knew silence could be its own kind of language. Chlara had not spoken a word since childhood. An illness had taken her voice when she was young. The healers had tried, her mother had prayed, her father had grown tired of waiting, but no sound ever came from her throat. She grew into a woman who lived in silence, communicating with her hands, her eyes, and the quiet strength of her presence. Some pitied her. Others ignored her. She learned to endure both. But that night, something shifted. From the shadows of the forest, a figure emerged, tall, broad-shouldered, wrapped in a cloak of thick fur. His dark hair hung loose around his face, and his eyes, gray and sharp as winter steel, locked on hers. Behind him, two wolves moved silently, their heads low but their gaze alert. Chlara froze. The man did not speak at first. He only studied her, as if her very being had unsettled something deep within him. Then in a low, steady voice he said, "You should not be here." Chlara lowered her eyes but did not move. She felt his presence like a storm building, powerful yet contained. "You hear me," he said again. "Closer now. This forest belongs to my pack. Outsiders walk here at their own risk." She raised her chin slightly. Though she could not answer, her eyes spoke for her. "I have walked here all my life," he seemed to notice. His frown softened just for a breath. Then his gaze sharpened again. "You cannot speak," he said quietly, more to himself than to her. His tone carried no cruelty, only curiosity. "Yet you stand here unafraid." Chlara thought he might turn away, but instead he reached out, lifting her hood back. Her hair, dark as the forest at night, tumbled forward. His hand lingered for a moment, as though confirming something he already knew. "You are mine," he murmured, almost in disbelief. "The moon has chosen." Clara's heart stumbled. She did not need words to understand what he meant. Stories of werewolves had traveled through the village for years, tales of alphas, of packs, of mates bound by fate. She had always thought they were only that, stories. But standing in front of him, feeling the weight of his gaze, she realized this was no tale. He was an alpha, and she was his mate. His name was Nathaniel Blackwood. The days that followed blurred between fear and strange calm. Nathaniel did not force her to his side, but neither did he let her slip away. He came to her village not as a stranger, but as a shadow that only she seemed to notice. His wolves lingered near the tree line, their eyes glinting in the dark. When he finally approached her home, her hands trembled as she opened the door. "You belong with me," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "I know your silence, I feel it. And I know the weight of carrying what others cannot understand. You think your silence makes you weak, but I tell you it does not. It makes you stronger." Chlara shook her head. Her hands moved in gestures, telling him she could not live in his world. That she was only human. That she had no place among wolves. But Nathaniel only stepped closer. "You are not only human. You are my mate, and nothing in this world has more place at my side than you." She wanted to resist. She wanted to believe he was wrong. Yet when his hand brushed hers, warmth spread through her chest. It was not force. It was not command. It was something deeper, an undeniable pull. A bond that had been written long before either of them was born. Still, a question gnawed at her heart. How could a man of power, an alpha who ruled wolves, accept a woman who could not speak? Winter grew heavier. Snow began to fall, covering the forest in silver silence. Chlara found herself drawn more often to the woods. Sometimes Nathaniel walked beside her. Sometimes he followed at a distance, letting her think she was alone, though she could always feel his presence. One evening, the village gathered for a festival. Music, laughter, and fire filled the air. Chlara stood at the edge of the crowd, her cloak wrapped tight around her. She watched people dance, their joy like flames leaping in the night. Then a man shouted, "There, look, the Alpha's shadow." The music broke. Fear spread like wind through dry grass. Nathaniel stood at the edge of the square, wolves flanking him. His eyes searched the crowd until they found Chlara. "Come," he said. The villagers pulled away from her, leaving her standing alone. Whispers filled the air. Words like witch, cursed, taken by the wolves. Her chest tightened. For the first time in years, she wanted to scream, to tell them she was still Chlara, still their daughter, still herself. But no sound came. Tears stung her eyes as she looked at Nathaniel. She shook her head, begging him silently not to make her choose. But his gaze held only patience. He did not move closer, did not command her. He simply stood, steady as the forest itself, waiting. And then Chlara realized the truth. Silence was not her weakness. It was her gift. Where others filled the air with fear and noise, she carried calm. Where words failed, her presence spoke. And Nathaniel, Alpha, leader feared by many, heard her silence more clearly than anyone had ever heard her voice. Slowly, Chlara stepped forward. Not because he ordered, not because she was claimed, but because she chose. Her cloak brushed the snow as she walked toward him. The whispers of the village faded. The wolves bowed their heads as she passed. When she reached him, Nathaniel lowered his own head slightly as if honoring her choice. Then for the first time, his lips curved into something soft. A smile, faint but real. Chlara never spoke again. Her voice never returned, but she learned something more powerful than words: trust. She walked the forest with Nathaniel, the alpha who carried storms in his eyes but gentleness in his hands. She learned the ways of the pack, not as an outsider but as one who belonged. When danger came, she stood by his side. When peace settled, she shared it with him in quiet moments beneath the moon. Her silence, once a burden, became her strength. It was the language that bound her to him. It was the proof that even without words, love could be heard. And in that bond, Chlara found something she had never known before. Not just a mate, not just an alpha, but a place where she was truly seen. A place where silence was no longer emptiness. It was home.